Social Security is a life-saving program for many seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities. Do you ever feel like you don't have a say in how this vital program is managed? After years of paying into Social Security, you do deserve a voice in its future. AARP's You've Earned a Say is a national conversation committed to providing you with important Social Security facts, as well as information about the proposals on the table in Washington, without political jargon and spin. AARP's You've Earned a Say has sponsored this half-hour show on Social Security to answer your questions about this critical program. Special thanks to Darrigal Pines Retirement Community in Orono for hosting AARP. Enjoy the program, and if you have any questions, visit aarp.org/me and earnedasay.org.
Hello, and welcome to this special program brought to you by AARP's You've Earned a Say initiative. We are here today to talk about Social Security, a critical program for retirees, those living with disabilities, and for those who have lost their spouse or parent. My name is Steve Bowler of Darrigal Pines. It is my pleasure to serve as moderator for this timely and important discussion. Please join us as we talk about the challenges, the prospects for strengthening Social Security now and for the future generations. We are pleased to welcome AARP's Maine State Director, Lori Parham. Dr. Parham is the State Director for AARP in Maine, representing more than 230,000 members statewide. She has worked in AARP's national office in Washington, D.C., and also led AARP's work in Florida. Dr. Parham has extensive experience in health, long-term care, and end-of-life policy issues. Over the course of her career, she has worked as a researcher, policy analyst, and advocate for older people. Dr. Parham will share opening comments with us, and we will take questions from our studio audience here at Darrigal Pines in Orono. We'd also like to encourage our viewers to visit www.earnedasay.org for more information about the future of Social Security and how each one of us can play a role in this important decision. So let us begin by welcoming AARP's Maine State Director, Lori Parham. Lori, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks to all of you who are here today. I'm really happy to be here and look forward to talking with you about Social Security and to hear your questions. We are here today to talk about this program that has never been more important to millions of Americans across the country and right here in Maine. More than 1/3 of those over 65 in Maine collect Social Security, and that is their only source of income. They have no pensions or investments, just that steady check every month to buy their food, heat their homes, and pay for other healthcare expenses. So just 1/3 of people 65 and older rely solely on Social Security for their income. That's a large number of people. And that check is just over $1,000 a month. So think about what heating oil costs. Think about what healthcare out-of-pocket costs. If you're living on about $12,000 a year, there's not much room there for give. Social Security is there for retirees both in good times and in bad. The benefits do not decline in an economic downturn. They are a guaranteed benefit. During the Great Recession, when retirees saw their investment income drop, if they were fortunate enough to have it, they knew they would still get their Social Security check each month. Besides workers, Social Security also provides essential benefits to those who cannot work due to a disability. It also provides survivors' benefits to widows, widowers, and children who lose a parent. My family felt this personally. My grandmother lost her husband at 46, and she had 4 children. And so Social Security really helped her as she dealt with the grief and dealt with the financial consequences since at the time she wasn't working. Traditionally, retirees have relied on the 3-legged stool for their financial security in later life. That's what we like to think of Social Security as. Those 3 legs are Social Security, personal savings, and employer pensions. These make up, or traditionally have made up, an individual's retirement. But we know savings rates have dropped, and there just aren't that many private pensions left. And for people who do have access to private pensions, many companies are beginning to default on what they owe their retirees. Yet Social Security still is there. we cannot ignore the fact that Social Security is facing some challenges because people are living longer. And during the Great Recession, when people lost jobs, more people started collecting Social Security earlier as well. And so we need to have robust and honest conversations about the future of Social Security, not only for current beneficiaries, but for future beneficiaries, because I know I'm relying on it when it's time for me to start collecting. So Social Security isn't in crisis, but it makes sense to look at the issues that are there and start to solve them sooner rather than later. And that's why we think discussions like the one we're going to have today are so critically important. Now, it's important to note that Social Security has not contributed one dime to the nation's deficit. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Social Security is an off-budget program. The discussions about the future of the program should not be wrapped up in those discussions when we talk about what changes may need to be made to the program. With so much at stake, the decisions about the future of the program deserve close attention and active participation by folks like you and many of the others who will be tuning in for this show. And we hope that our elected leaders will work together to find long-term solutions that are responsible for the future of the program. So I really look forward to hearing your questions today. I'm hoping I can share some facts that you may not be aware of and that we have a really good conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lori. Really appreciate that. And at this time, we're going to open up for questions for you. All right? Any questions?
Is Social Security in any financial trouble?
Well, that's a great question, and boy, will you hear the pundits debate that. I'm going to give you the facts from the 2013 Trustees Report. Who are the trustees? They're a group of folks. They represent both sides of the aisle and experts in this kind of policy, and they do projections based on the economy and demographics and those kinds of factors to give us a sense year to year about how Social Security is doing. The Trustees Report for 2013 projects that Social Security will be fully solvent, and that means can pay full benefits to retirees until 2033. After 2033, if no changes are made to the program, the Social Security could pay 75% of benefits out to 2080 something. And so we recalculate, or the trustees recalculate year to year, so you might see a little fluctuation, but Social Security can pay full benefits until 2033. Now, we found during the Great Recession, because a number of people lost their job and decided to go ahead and claim, that the period for solvency declined a little bit. But as the economy has improved, you could see that number go out a little more. And that's why they really do the yearly, they look yearly, so we have a sense. Now, again, these are projections, but those are the current projections that folks are looking at. Mm-hmm.
How is Social Security funded?
So, Social Security is funded by payroll taxes largely. Both employees and employers pay in to Social Security a 6.2%, what you've probably see on your paycheck as a FICA. And this goes, you pay up to a cap, up to $113,500. So if you're fortunate enough to make more than that, and here in Maine, people tell me they don't know too many people who are doing that well, but then you're not taxed on the rest. But you pay tax on Social Security currently up to $113,500, and that is split with your employer. If you work for yourself, you pay both sides of the tax, but you're eligible to get the employer piece back when you file your personal income tax return. And so that's how they work it. Then beyond the payroll taxes, Social Security is invested in U.S. government treasury bonds, and there's interest that is earned on those bonds, and that interest helps fund the program. Also, higher income individuals on Social Security are actually taxed on their Social Security benefits, and those dollars also go into the program to fund it.
Is everyone eligible for Social Security?
That's a great question. And there's a lot of confusion on this as well. So not everyone is eligible for Social Security. You do pay into the system via payroll taxes, and similar to Medicare, you have to get those quarters of time worked in, or you have to have a spouse who has that time worked in as well. You have to be a U.S. citizen or a legal resident. Illegal immigrants do not collect Social Security, despite what you may hear. But there are a lot of different situational circumstances that make eligibility a little bit different. So, for example, there are survivors' benefits. There are benefits for widows and widowers. You may be able to collect Social Security benefits off of if you're divorced, off of your spouse, which some folks don't like, but that is how the rules are set. If you are a couple and one of you did not work outside the home and then you are divorced, one of you may not have had access to pay into Social Security, and so they want to make sure you've got some funding later in life. So there are a lot of specific circumstances and rules depending on your situation. And then, of course, currently you can claim as young as 62, but you are penalized for claiming early. It's best to try to wait if you can, but again, I have folks who ask me, well, when should I start claiming? Everyone's circumstances are so different, whether you're single or married, whether you have a retiree pension or not, whether you've been able to put a lot of money away, what are your health conditions. And then I also should mention that you can also qualify for Social Security if you are disabled. And there are a lot of folks across the country who are enrolled in Social Security similar to Medicare who are disabled. And you have to go through a lot of legal steps and requirements in order to get approved for Social Security before retiree age.
Will we get a COLA in 2014?
There's some good news and some bad news. In October of every year, the projections for the COLA for the next year are done. And in October, it was announced that there will be a cost of living adjustment for 2014. But this year's adjustment for 2013 was 1.7%, and 2014 it will be 1.5%. So we're already hearing concern from some retirees. I should also note that starting in 2014, employees who make up to $117,000 a year, not the $113,500 I mentioned earlier, but employees will be taxed up to $117,000. So they've raised that cap a little as well to bring some more money into the program.
Are there any proposals on the table in Washington to protect Social Security?
So there is a move to, in essence, provide a broader array of benefits to people. And earlier I mentioned, it's along the same line, benefits for folks who may have had to leave the workforce for caregiving purposes. So ensuring that those folks are protected in retirement, that they have some credit for the work that they did outside of the traditional workforce. And so along with the proposals on the table that would potentially cut the program, there are also those that want to see the program expanded as well. Right now, there's just a lot of debate, both in Congress across the board, on what it is we need to ensure that the program is solvent for the future.
A couple of elections back, we heard the term lockbox, and everything was very secure because the lockbox had all the money we paid in. But somebody opened the lockbox and it was IOUs. How are the IOUs going to be funded?
So this gets back to what I was talking about earlier, the Treasury bonds. These are the most secure. They are the most secure investments, and so if the government purchases bonds, they have to repay those, and they have to repay them with interest. And to date, they have, and the expectation is that they will continue to do so. And it's actually written into the Social Security law that we have to invest in bonds, whether it's our government or some other. That's what the program will do to bring in that interest. But it is seen, and this to the point about the lockbox, it gets into the conversations around Social Security privatization. Should we open up the Social Security Trust Fund to the market? Well, if there was ever a time to look at for not wanting to do that, it was the Great Recession. Imagine what would have happened to the Social Security Trust Fund during the Great Recession. If any of you have your own investments, you saw what happened. And so that's why at AARP we feel strongly that earlier I talked about the three-legged stool. It's great to have personal investment. It's great to have a pension if you're fortunate enough to have one. But Social Security is a program with the cost of living adjustment that's there for you in good times and in bad. So moving beyond the Treasury bonds, I think, would be a real problem.
Why is Social Security sometimes referred to as an entitlement program?
Well, that's a lot of times programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid get called welfare programs. And that's unfortunate, and it's not true. Both with Social Security and Medicare, you have paid in all your working lives. You deserve access to these programs. You've paid taxes into these programs, knowing that those benefits, or assuming that those benefits are going to be there for you in retirement. And so it's really important that we continue to be aware of the language and really focus on the fact that these are programs that hardworking people have paid into throughout their working lives. And they should be there for them in retirement. And since I mentioned Medicaid, I'll share what a lot of folks don't understand is that Medicaid is the primary payer of long-term care in this country. A lot of folks don't know that Medicare does not cover long-term nursing home stays. If you have a short-term illness or you have surgery and you need rehab care in a nursing facility, Medicare will pay the first 20 days, and then it gets more difficult. And a lot of folks, hardworking, middle-income Americans, spin down their assets for long-term care, and they get to a point where they have nothing left. And that's where Medicaid comes in and picks up the long-term care bill. This isn't welfare. This is taking care of our oldest old at the end of life.
I have a question. Why does Social Security consider Maine employees as double dipping? And is there any possibility this will change?
So what we're talking about is either called the windfall elimination provision or the government pension offset. There are 13 states where retired teachers are, in essence, penalized for their teacher pension. And they're actually penalized even if their spouse, a spouse is penalized if their loved one is a teacher. So in essence, your Social Security check is diminished because you were a teacher. And what's really sad is a lot people move to Maine and they don't even know that in retirement that they're going to be penalized. This is a federal issue. In order to take care of the change, which would mean paying out a lot more in Social Security benefits to retired teachers in these states, there's a big cost to it. There's a big fiscal note. And so Congress has not wanted to deal with the issue because there's so many issues on the table that we're dealing with in terms of funding. But I hear, as I travel the state, I hear from more and more retired teachers that this is a real problem because in essence you're penalized because you are married to someone who was a retired teacher or who taught and is now a retired teacher.
Laurie, how important is Social Security to Maine's economy?
So that's a great question. Folks don't often think about what the benefit means more broadly. 2011 estimates are that Social Security brought $3.6 billion into Maine's economy. And that's hugely important to a state our size with a population relatively small. And that's based on benefits in Maine that are pretty small too. The average benefit in Maine is just over $1,000 a month, which is below the national average for Social Security checks across the country. So $3.6 billion that are coming in through Social Security checks that go back into the Maine economy. Thank you. You're welcome.
What is the history of Social Security in our country, and is it protected by the Constitution?
Boy, we could be here all day. Social Security's birthday is August 14th, 1935, Roosevelt. So Social Security was enacted in 35, started paying benefits in 1937. In 39, survivors were added to Social Security to receive benefits. And in 1956, disability coverage was added to Social Security. But the Social Security legislation was much broader than just this one retiree benefit. The Department of Labor Secretary at the time, Francis Perkins, had a very broad vision of what social insurance should look like. And so the legislation also included unemployment compensation, as well as what was known at the time as aid to dependent children, which has now been renamed TANF, and it's gone through many iterations. But it was definitely meant to be a much broader set of policies to ensure that we could keep people across the life course out of poverty. And so this was legislation. This is not a constitutional amendment. This is legislation that was written that can be changed. And so you can see with the years that I gave that the program did change over time. And then the last real set of reforms happened under President Reagan. There was a real bipartisan effort to make some changes to the program to keep it solvent, and that was 1983. And they made some adjustments to the retirement age, among other things. So.
Is it really true that the government has borrowed against Social Security?
So I started to answer this a little bit earlier, but this is the investment in the Treasury bonds, and this is the safest form of investment. The bonds must be repaid with interest, and we have never defaulted. And you should know that in its entire history, Social Security has never missed a payment. Social Security has never missed a payment.
What if we raise the payroll tax cap? Wouldn't that fix the problem?
Depends on who you ask. It depends on who you ask. So there have been some analyses that have been done, and we actually have what we call the Social Security Solvency Calculator, where you can look at 10 or so different policy changes to the program and see how you could close the solvency gap. Remember when I talked about going to from full funding to 75%? Well, how would you continue to fully fund the program? So one way to do this would be look at increasing the cap, or what some people like to say, scrapping the cap. So this next year, the cap will go up a little. If we were to totally scrap the cap on income, that means for that 6% of the country that makes above $113,500, they would continue to pay on their earned income. You would close 86% of the solvency gap. So this is one idea that is very popular with a lot of people. Now, the folks who are making lots of money, who are going to continue to pay, aren't necessarily crazy about it, but that's because there's less money coming into their pockets. Now, when I travel around Maine and I mention 113.5, people kind of laugh at me. But we will see the increase to 117, and then there will be this debate on whether we go up to, say, 130 or 250. A lot of folks see 250,000 as the dividing line for folks, or do we just scrap it altogether? So I think we'll be hearing a lot more about increasing the cap or scrapping the cap, as some folks like to call it, in the future. All right, any other questions? Okay.
Stay right there.
Okay.
I'll just sit back. I want to thank our presenter today, Lori Perm from AARP Maine. And just as a footnote, I don't know if you know, but Frances Perkins actually was from Newcastle.
You know,
So-
and I wanted to say something about that. She is an amazing woman who has roots in Maine.
She
and
does.
That's pretty
Yep.
neat.
So it's nice to hear that Maine was really involved in getting Social Security pushed forward out there too. So I want to thank our audience today and all the viewers at home for joining us about Social Security. And if you're interested in more information, you can go to www.earnedasay.org or www.aarp.org/ME. So, and I'm sure if you have any questions, you're welcome to call the office down there too. for
Absolutely.
those things. So thank you very much, Lori. Appreciate your presentation
Thank you,
today.
Steve.
Tune in Saturday, December 14th at 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. for a special presentation on Medicare, sponsored by AARP's You've Earned a Say. Lori Parham, State Director of AARP Maine, and Rhonda Selvin of Maine Quality Counts will discuss the Medicare program, its challenges, and its future. Join Lori Parham and Rhonda Selvin and learn more about Medicare Saturday, December 14th at 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. Brought to you by AARP's You've Earned a Say.